civil unrest in a generation, but it's important during challenging times to look for and celebrate the light. And that's what today's press event is about. I want to thank Shannon Ginther and the Columbus Women's Commission, Kate Mcgarvey, Legal Aid Society of Columbus, our great city attorney, Zach Klein, incredible partner, Councilmember Shayla Favor, who's also a member of the Women's Commission. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us today. In his book, Evicted, Matthew Desmond wrote, "Eviction is a cause, not just a condition, poverty. We know the importance of stable housing for families, a roof over your head, a place to sleep. It is a basic need for all people. The reverse is heartbreakingly true. When a family loses stable housing, everything is thrown into chaos. How will parents get to work, especially if they rely on public transportation? Where will the children go to school?" Another fact, evictions disproportionately impact women, disproportionately women of color and single mothers. Desmond also wrote that evictions are to African-American women what incarceration has been to African-American men. In February, I laid out my equity agenda, an agenda that calls out racism and discrimination where it exists, and our plans as a community to address it. It includes reducing infant mortality by making sure that Black babies reach their first birthday and thrive in their earliest years of life. It's ensuring access to high-quality pre-K, regardless of your zip code. Police reform to ensure every resident feels safe in their neighborhood. Increasing the availability of affordable housing and working to reduce evictions where we know Black moms are disproportionately impacted. The Columbus Women's Commission has been key to drawing attention to evictions in Franklin County. We are the only county in Ohio that, until this decision came out, allowed residents to be evicted, for those evictions to take place without the landlord being present. We were an outlier, not just in this state, but around the country, and we needed to change. Last year, there were more than 16,000 evictions filed in Franklin County, one of the highest rates of eviction in the country. Today, we are happy to announce a decision that will make real and tangible changes for those facing eviction here in our community. And I want to publicly thank Judges Jennifer Bruner, Julie Dorian, and William Clapp for the courage to right a wrong, all together, issuing the same opinion, a sign that when we come together as a community, we can address injustices and move this community forward together. It's now my pleasure to introduce Kate Mcgarvey, Executive Director of the Ohio State Legal Services Association, that has been integral in the fight for equity in the eviction process. We've also been lucky to have her serve on the Columbus Women's Commission. Kate, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Ginther, and thank you so much for the opportunity to be here this afternoon and for your support on this issue. For 32 years, since Oak Brook Realty versus Blount, Franklin County Municipal Court has allowed evictions to move forward without live testimony from the landlord or property manager, and by affidavit alone. On Tuesday, the decision by the 10th District Court of Appeals and TNR Properties versus Wimberly changed that. Now, to evict a tenant, the court will be required to have in-person testimony on the landlord side, meaning that landlords will now be expected to meet the exact same requirements that every other plaintiff in a legal dispute is required to meet. While this may seem like merely a procedural issue, it will go a long way towards creating a fairer process for Franklin County tenants. Over the last 5 years, due to the efforts of advocates, the court, the city, and local organizations, Franklin County Municipal Court has been transformed into a community court with an ever-growing collection of agencies at court every morning. They're for the sole purpose of seeking resolutions that will keep families housed and out of shelters. But reaching a resolution requires landlord participation. Tenants in the past would be frustrated when they came to court with money in hand, hoping to come to an agreement, but their landlords were not present in court, and so no resolution could be reached. The Wimberly decision will ensure that landlords are now at court and able to participate in working with the tenants and agencies at court to seek resolutions that will keep Franklin County families housed. In addition, it will reduce the number of trips tenants have to take to eviction court. Previously, when the tenant, but not the landlord, came to court, the case would be rescheduled for the following week to allow the landlord a second chance to come. This inconvenienced tenants who would have to come to court a second time, thus missing another morning of work, or needing to find childcare for a second morning. With landlords and tenants both required to appear in court, such rescheduled hearings will not be needed, benefiting everyone. Most importantly, participation by landlords or their property managers will ensure that each of the elements required to legally obtain an eviction are met. For example, instead of submitting information through an affidavit that may or be 1 or 2 weeks old, landlords will now have to come to court and give in-person testimony that the rent is overdue. This requirement is not merely technical. We have seen cases where the rent was paid prior to the eviction hearing, but the landlord was not present to testify to that. And as a result, the tenant was evicted based on an affidavit that was signed days or weeks before the tenant got caught up in rent. Similarly, landlords will now have to testify that the tenant is still living at the rental property. We have seen cases where the tenant moved out prior to the eviction hearing, and thus the tenant should not have been evicted. But the tenant was still evicted based on an affidavit signed days or weeks again before the hearing. And while the tenant might have left, that eviction judgment will follow them as they seek new housing for years to come. We believe that the 10th District's decision will not only make the eviction process fairer for tenants, but will also greatly improve the ability of the agencies housed at eviction court to find solutions that keep families housed and out of shelters. And this was truly a team effort. The role of the Columbus Women's Commission and the other amici cannot be overstated. The amici included the Affordable Housing Alliance, ALVIS, BREAD, Coalition on Homeless and Housing in Ohio, Community Mediation Services, Community Shelter Board, the Human Services Chamber, Student Legal Services at Ohio State, and the YWCA. Pro bono attorneys for Bricker and Eckler drafted the brief, which was incredibly important to the outcome and really showing the importance of the issue to our community. We also had a number of legal aid board members who went above and beyond what might be considered typical board member duties to help in a host of different ways on this case, and we are grateful for everyone's support. With that, I have the pleasure of introducing Shannon Ginther. Shannon is the First Lady of Columbus and the chair of the Columbus Women's Commission, who I have had the pleasure of serving with for the past almost 4 years. Thanks to her vision, the Women's Commission has focused on many issues which are of huge importance to our community, including evictions. Shannon?
Thank you, Kate, for your leadership in this work and your commitment, unwavering commitment to our community. This is a day to celebrate. When we formed Columbus Women's Commission 4 years ago, we named housing issues as a key area of focus. We talked to housing partners to better understand the landscape. We talked to residents to understand their lived experiences. And we went to 375 South High Street, the 11th floor of the courthouse, to sit in eviction court. What we saw in eviction court moved us in many ways. Mostly, though, moved us to action. We saw women being evicted. We saw single mothers with children being evicted. We saw women in their 70s being evicted. And most of these women were women of color. Evictions in our community and across the nation show the racial and gender inequities present and around us. This conversation today is more timely and important than ever. We are seeing the impact of COVID-19 and its impact on women across the nation and across the world. Systematic racism and sexism in our nation is being exposed. We are called to action, each of us. In the first year of the commission, the Evictions Committee met to explore strategies and address eviction reform. And we said, if we could change one thing, just one thing, it would be to change the way the affidavit procedure is handled in eviction court. And here we are today. The Women's Commission brings partners to the table. From the beginning, the Commission has convened conversations and developed partnerships to build on existing work in our community and to help identify where we can affect change for women and families, where we can change policies that impact lives. We have had many partners with us on this journey as we have steadily made positive strides in eviction reform over the last 2 years. Thank you to the Legal Aid Society for your advocacy, to City Council for your work on behalf of residents, to City Attorney Klein for your leadership, and to the Franklin County Municipal Court for being a part of our collaborative conversations. Much work remains to be done to achieve true gender and racial equity in Columbus. With each collective step we take to address barriers, we build awareness and open doors to solutions and beneficial policy changes. Our movement toward gender and racial equity will make Columbus stronger and more inclusive for all of our residents. We've seen positive strides in our work. Thank you to our community members, to our members of the Columbus Women's Commission, and to many partners working together to address evictions and housing reform in our community. I now have the pleasure of introducing a leader in our community who is working tirelessly for residents. She has made significant strides this year and continues to be a tremendous advocate for women. Columbus Women's Commission member and City Council member, Shayla Faber.
Thank you, Shannon, and good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of my colleagues at Columbus City Council, I want to start by acknowledging everyone joining this important and exciting announcement today. There are so many concerted efforts to address the issues around housing and evictions in our community, from the work of Mayor Ginther and the Department of Development to the Women's Commission, Legal Aid, and our many housing partners across the city. There are so many people and organizations working hard behind the scenes that have helped make this news possible. This is an incredible win, not just for the advocates helping advance this work, but for our residents who deserve fairness and stable housing. This, along with many other efforts we've worked hard on the last several months to keep families in their homes during this difficult time. As Council's Housing Chair, I have been honored to sponsor legislation to contribute $10 million in CARES Act funding to Impact Community Action and the Hope Fund to provide rental assistance to individuals and families in need. As of last week, Impact has served over 1,200 people in our community and spent over $2.5 million to keep families out of eviction court and stably housed during the pandemic. Thank you to Bo Chilton and his team for helping lead these efforts. Additionally, we have allocated $250,000 to the Legal Aid Society of Columbus to help increase the capacity of the Tenant Advocacy Project to provide legal representation to tenants facing an eviction. And we've provided $100,000 to community mediation services to assist individuals and families with eviction prevention, conflict management, and mediation services for those who are currently homeless or at imminent risk of becoming homeless due to COVID-19 or the economic impact of the pandemic. And just this week, we've learned of the CDC's temporary moratorium on evictions that will save millions of people across the entire country from losing their housing. These are all critical, impactful efforts that will not only help our community during this pandemic, but long-term. Thank you again to everyone involved in this important work, including our next speaker, City Attorney Zach Klein.
Well, thanks, Councilmember Faber, and to Mayor Ginther, First Lady Ginther, and to my friend Kate Mcgarvey, just really rock stars and amazing advocates in this space for the folks who are most vulnerable, that need legal help, that need a voice in the courtroom to level the playing field on a whole sorts of issues, but especially housing in the city of Columbus. And this is a tremendous win for those who are struggling to keep housing, to level the playing field between the tenant and the landlord, especially during the time of a pandemic. You know, the decision this week that came down from the Court of Appeals really created this now fair level playing field between tenants and landlords. As previously was stated, If the landlord's attorney appeared for trial, but the tenant did not, a decision on an eviction would routinely be issued without testimony of a single witness, meaning that tenants could be evicted in merely a matter of seconds. But if the tenant showed up and the landlord did not, then the case was often continued. That's not fair. Both parties should be present, and weight shouldn't be given simply to the landlord over the tenant, because many of these tenants work hourly jobs and have to take buses and connect, miss work, and don't have the flexibility within their own employment, whether it be for working or for childcare, to get back down to court simply because the landlord didn't show up. As we stated in our friend of the court brief and representing the Women's Commission in the city of Columbus, and as the mayor appropriately stated, the statistics are stark, and they're really important to remember that women, primarily women of color, are disproportionately impacted by eviction. And if we're trying to build strong and safe neighborhoods in the city of Columbus, at the root of that is good, affordable housing. Of course, I understand that sometimes evictions are necessary, but that doesn't mean the process should be unfair. And this decision by the 10th District Court of Appeals that now puts Franklin County and the city of Columbus on the same level playing field as other 87 counties across Ohio, and what many cities do across the United States, levels that playing field to ensure that tenants and landlords can participate in a court proceeding at the same opportunity and have the same representation and the same worth in the eyes of the court. So at this time, I'd like to turn it back over to Mayor Ginther for some closing remarks.
Thank you, City Attorney Klein, and thanks to all of our speakers today, Kate Mcgarvey, Councilmember Favor, Shannon Ginther. This has been an extraordinary year of disruption from the global pandemic, an economic crisis that goes with it, the reckoning for racial justice. At the same time, we are approaching the most divisive election in our country's history. But today, we have made positive progress on one of the biggest issues facing our community, evictions. Dr. King said that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it always bends towards justice. We're grateful to celebrate a step on that path today. Now I'd like to open it up to questions from the press. We're going to have you use the raised hand function. You all should have received instructions. You should see a hand button next to your name. Click on that to raise your hand. We'll unmute you one at a time to answer your questions. Be sure to unclick the hand after we've answered the questions unless you have another question or a follow-up. And please let us know your name and media affiliate that you're with. Any questions from the press? Looks like we have one from Rita Price. Rita?
Yep. Good afternoon, Mayor. I don't know if this is a question for you or for Kate, or two questions actually. One, can one of you talk about why Franklin County has been an outlier for so long on this? I'm not asking you to speak for the court, but if you could shed some light on, why this had to go through the courts or why it's been done this way for this long in Franklin County. And the other question is, how often, roughly are landlords invoking the affidavit option? Is this primarily by very large, or corporate filers? Does it, I don't know, Kate, if you have an idea, does it happen a quarter of the time? Not very often, half? And that's it. Those are my two questions.
Thanks, Rita. And I will ask Kate to answer those. My wife says I practice law without a license every day, but I think in this case, I'll let a lawyer who might understand the case law and case history to share a little bit about how we ended up here, Kate, and how often this is used in this way.
Yeah, well, thank you. The court's position on this was that they were really bound by the Blount decision, by that 1988 decision, and their reading of that decision allowed this practice to continue. Not all courts read it that way, but that was their position, and they really felt as though they were bound by that decision. And so I think one of the really wonderful things about the 10th district decision is that they clearly overrule Blount. And so that allows that practice to change in Franklin County without any just making it very clear. In terms of the practice, I know that we have one of our housing attorneys, maybe two, who are on the phone who can answer, who could answer this question better than me. What I will say, it is a significant practice. So I can't give you a percentage, but it's significant. It's used every day and, with stacks of evictions. And so this should have a big impact on what the practice of the court looks like going forward.
The only other thing I would add, Rita, is this was an issue that was called out numerous times over the last couple of years. We were part of the Rose Fellowship on Land Use, a partnership with Urban Land Institute and National League of Cities and otherwise that we went through. And there were folks from around the country, experts from around the country that were helping us on affordable housing and land use policies and those types of things. And they called this out specifically, and many folks covered their visit and sharing and shaping of our plans moving forward. And this was a top priority, and they called it out from a national perspective as an outlier issue and one that we as a community had to address moving forward. City Attorney Klein, any other legal perspectives from you at the City Attorney's Office? Councilmember Favor, Shannon, any additional comments or response to Rita?
I would just, I think that this decision, the timing of it is just, it couldn't be better right now. When we think of how many individuals are going through the eviction process, which is currently, eviction court is currently being held at our convention center. And so as we continue to promote and provide areas of social distancing, we did not stop when it comes to making sure our courts are following that to the best of our ability. This really does ensure, to city attorney Zach Klein's point, of an opportunity of fairness. And we know that for many reasons, tenants who were facing evictions were not able to show up to court, did not know how to navigate the court process, and were unfairly removed from their property. And so there are instances where evictions are absolutely necessary, but in those when this is just a transactional way of removing people, I'm happy that this decision has been handed down for our residents at this time.
Thank you, Council Member. Another question, I think, from, is it Pete Griever?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the news from the CDC. Probably this is for you, Kate. I'm wondering if you can talk about what's going to happen with eviction cases that are going on right now, and then also, if you have a sense of how many Columbus residents who go through eviction cases will be sort of eligible under these new criteria from the CDC for their eviction and their halt on evictions.
So we've really still been trying to digest what the CDC decision, what that will mean, what will be required of tenants in terms of filling out a declaration, what might be required by courts for landlords to show that individuals are not eligible for that. I don't think we have a sense yet of how many people it could be. I think it could be quite big, but depending on some of those details, will determine just how significant that is. So we're still trying to digest that and figure out how some of this will work in practice, but do hope to have more information for everyone on that soon.
Rita, do you have another question or a follow-up question?
Actually, Mayor, that's what I was going to ask Kate about the CDC moratorium, which is kind of murky. It seems like I know that committee at municipal court and the judges are working on this right now. So I'm hoping to learn more, but I guess what your answer, Kate, a minute ago tells me that everybody's kind of still in the thick of it and figuring out how this might work. Do you expect that there will be guidance from the Supreme Court, from the Ohio Supreme Court, maybe on how our municipal courts are going to handle this?
That's a good question. I don't know. I know that, overall, throughout COVID, they have issued some general guidance, but not been willing to give some specifics on what the court should be doing or shouldn't be doing. I would expect that to be the same in this situation. And there have been a number of different task forces, including around evictions, which has issued guidance that the Supreme Court has. I haven't heard any movement on that since the CDC came out with this, however.
City Attorney Klein, any response from you to Rita's question? Anything you'd like to say? Okay. Any other questions from the press? Well, it is a significant day when you think about it, that there were 16,000 evictions filed last year in this community. And now for the first time in 32 years, Franklin County tenants will not be evicted by affidavit. It's not just 16,000 people, that's 16,000 families. And you think about our neighborhoods, our quality of life in this community, the well-being of children, and the safety, health, and welfare of families during a global pandemic. This couldn't have come, as Councilmember Faber said, at a more critical time. So thank you all for your partnership and work on this. And if there are any additional questions, please follow up with our communications teams and we'll get you answers. Thanks for joining us, everybody.